Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time. Not to witness epic battles or the rise and fall of emperors, but to simply relax. Imagine, if you will, that you've had a long day of, well, being a Roman, and the general cacophony of a thriving city filling the air. The sun, a warm Roman sun, beats down, and you can feel the humidity rising from the unpaved alleyways. Your destination, the local thermae or public baths, these weren't just a quick dip. They were an event, a ritual, a daily necessity for almost every Roman citizen, rich or poor. You're not just going to get clean, you're going for the experience. Imagine the scent of olive oil, stale sweat, and damp stone mingling with the faint, pleasant aroma of incense wafting from a nearby temple. You can hear the distant murmur of voices, the splash of water, and the occasional clang of metal from inside the bath complex. It's an auditory tapestry that promises relaxation, or at least a good scrub. You adjust your toga, if you're a citizen, that is. Otherwise, perhaps a simpler tunic, enjoying the flow of people heading towards the grand arched entrance of the bathhouse. Historians still argue whether the sheer volume of daily bathgoers meant a constant, slow queue for popular times, or if the system was surprisingly efficient. One quirky tidbit. Some bathhouses had specific express lanes for those who simply wanted a quick dip and dash. Though these were rare and usually found in smaller, less elaborate facilities, the scale of these operations, mind you, was immense. Think about the sheer volume of water required, the heating systems, and the constant maintenance. It's enough to make your modern spa look like a child's paddling pool. You nudge past a group of animated senators discussing politics, their voices echoing off the stone walls. A woman with an elaborate hairstyle, adorned with delicate bone pins, glides past, carrying a small basket containing her bathing essentials. A young boy, no older than 7 or 8, excitedly races ahead of his father, eager to reach the cool waters. The public baths were truly a cross-section of Roman society, a place where senators rubbed shoulders, quite literally, with slaves, merchants, and soldiers. It was a democratic space in a hierarchical society, albeit one where your social standing might still dictate how much time you spent chatting with the patron, or if you even had the privilege of entering the more exclusive, though still public sections. As you get closer, the warmth emanating from the building becomes palpable. A comforting heat that promises relief from the day's grime. The hum of conversation grows louder, punctuated by splashes and the rhythmic thud of a strigil scraping skin. You take a deep breath and mentally prepare for the unique, communal cleansing experience that awaits you within the surprisingly chill embrace of the Roman thermae. Maybe you argued with a merchant about the price of olives, or perhaps you just finished a particularly strenuous session of wrestling in the palestra. Your toga feels a bit sticky, and a fine layer of Roman dust clings to every surface of your skin. You're hot, you're tired, and all you want is a good soak. You've probably wanted to survive this journey without at least a mild sense of longing for their simpler, though sometimes far more communal, hygiene habits. Tonight, we're going to explore the surprisingly chill, often chaotic, and utterly essential world of the Roman public bath routines. These weren't just places to get clean. They were the social clubs, the gyms, the spas, and sometimes even the libraries of the ancient world. They were woven into the very fabric of daily Roman life, a constant hum of activity, steam, and conversation. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing on a bustling Roman street, the sounds of horse-drawn carts rattling over cobblestones, vendors hawking their wares.
As you approach the grand entrance, the sounds of the city gradually recede, replaced by the distinct acoustics of the bathhouse itself. The Roman thermae weren't just a building. They were an architectural marvel, designed to handle thousands of visitors daily. Think of a modern airport. But instead of planes, it's people. And instead of boarding passes, well, it's basically just you and your intention to get clean. These were not just functional buildings. They were statements of Roman power and civic pride. Many were funded by emperors or wealthy benefactors, given as gifts to the people, ensuring their popularity and cementing their legacy. This isn't just a changing room. It's a bustling, echoing cavern of stone filled with the sounds of rustling tunics, the clatter of sandals, and the low murmur of conversations. You begin to undress, carefully folding your toga or tunic. Do you trust the person next to you? Do you hide your coin purse deep within your sandals? Some Romans would even bring a trusted slave specifically to guard their belongings, a human locker, if you will. These weren't just utilitarian buildings, they were often beautifully decorated, designed to impress and to provide a pleasant aesthetic experience. You finish undressing, perhaps tying a small towel around your waist, or simply embracing the full Roman experience of nudity. This was, after all, a very different cultural context regarding public modesty. Once you're ready, you leave your precious belongings to the fates, or your capsarius, and prepare to move deeper into the bath complex, towards the first true chamber of warmth. The journey through the apodarium is a transition, a shedding of the outside world, both literally and figuratively, as you prepare to immerse yourself in the communal embrace of the Roman bath. This was a luxury, of course, not available to everyone. For the average Roman, it was a gamble, a test of faith in their fellow bathers, or perhaps just a resigned acceptance that sometimes your tunic might just vanish. It's a stark reminder that while the baths were democratic in access, they weren't always democratic in security. This is where things get interesting, and perhaps a little less chill than you might initially imagine. Personal security wasn't exactly top-notch in the Roman baths. While some larger, more affluent bathhouses might have had attendants, often slaves, who would watch over your belongings. Many smaller or busier establishments offered little more than an open cubby. This leads to one of the more humorous, if slightly angry. Historians still argue about the true scale of this problem. Was it a minor nuisance or a widespread epidemic? We know from various Roman legal texts and inscriptions that it was common enough to warrant specific laws and even curses against thieves. One particularly vivid example is a cursed tablet found in Britain, where a Roman citizen implored a god to inflict illness and suffering upon the person who stole his cloak and money from the bag. Talk about taking a bad day at the spa. Personally, imagine a modern gym locker room. But instead of sleek metal lockers, you're looking at rows of small open cubbies or niches carved directly into the stone walls. This is where you all shed your outer garments and prepare for the heat and humidity to come. The stone walls, smooth and cool to the touch in some places, already feel slightly damp in others, hinting at the steam that permeates the inner chambers. You might see others already oiled up, their skin glistening, ready for their pre-bath exercises. Or perhaps they're just emerging from the baths, their skin pink and relaxed, ready to redress. The sounds here are a mix of anticipation and post-bath contentment, a sigh of relief, a groan of exertion, the soft padding of bare feet on the mosaic floor. You might pass by a small shrine to a minor deity of health or hygiene, a common sight in Roman public spaces where a quick prayer might be offered for a particularly good soul. Remember how the Romans integrated their gods into almost every aspect of daily life? Even something as mundane as bathing had its divine patrons. You step across the threshold, and the air immediately feels warmer, a comforting blanket compared to the outside chill or heat. The sounds are a low murmur at first, then swell into a chorus of voices, splashes, and the unique scraping sound that will become very familiar later. This is it! You're about to step into the heart of Roman communal life, a place where business deals were struck, gossip was exchanged, and the simple act of personal hygiene transformed into a social spectacle. The journey to the baths, in its own way, was part of the ritual, a gentle winding down from the world outside, preparing you for the tranquil sanctuary within. You take a final breath of the outside air and step through the grand entrance, ready for the next stage of your Roman bath experience. The first area you typically encounter is the forecourt or palestra, an open-air exercise ground. But before you even think about working up another sweat, you need to prepare for the main event. Your daily commute to the baths wasn't always a straightforward affair, depending on your social standing and where you lived in relation to the nearest bathhouse. It could involve a leisurely stroll, a jostle through crowded market squares, or perhaps even a short ride in a litter. If you were feeling particularly fancier or had sensitive feet, imagine dodging street vendors selling hot sausages, weaving through flocks of geese being herded to market, and sidestepping puddles that were definitely not just rainwater. The streets of Rome, while fascinating, were far from pristine. One quirky tidbit: some wealthier Romans would send their slaves ahead of them to reserve a spot, or at least stake out a good changing cubby in the appetiterium, especially during peak hours. This, of course, was an early form of towel on the Sunlounger reservation, a practice that historians still argue about its true prevalence. Was it common, or merely an occasional luxury for the truly indolent? We may never fully know. As you navigate the bustling approach to the bathhouse, you notice the variety of people around you. There's the grizzled veteran, his face weathered by years of campaigning, his stride slow but purposeful. Beside him, a young couple, giggling as they playfully jostle each other. Children dart through legs, their laughter echoing. The baths were a true melting pot, a democratic space in a city often rigidly structured by class. You might find yourself walking alongside a senator, though he'd likely be attended by a retinue of slaves, or perhaps a humble craftsman heading for his daily cleansing ritual. The air is thick with anticipation, the shared understanding that a day's worth of dust and toil is about to be washed away, replaced by a feeling of refreshing cleanliness. The exterior of the bathhouse itself is often grand, adorned with statues, intricate carvings, and sometimes even vibrant frescoes, though these would fade over time. As you finally reach the main entrance, perhaps pausing to admire the craftsmanship of a bronze door or the intricate mosaic floor, you can feel the faint vibrations of the activity within. You've made it inside, and the first stop on your Roman bathing journey is the You find an empty niche, perhaps next to a boisterous group of soldiers comparing battle scars, or near a quiet philosopher engrossed in a scroll. So, as you carefully place your neatly folded clothes into your chosen niche, you can almost feel the eyes of others. The air in the appetiterium is already warmer than outside, a gentle prelude to the increasing temperatures you'll soon experience. You might notice the intricate mosaics on the floor, depicting scenes of sea creatures or mythological figures, a subtle reminder that even in this functional space, Roman artistry was ever present.
Having shed your outer layers in the appetiterium, you now step into the tepidarium. The name itself, derived from tepidus, meaning lukewarm or mildly warm, tells you everything you need to know. The light might filter in through high windows, creating a soft, diffused glow that encourages a sense of calm. You'll see fellow bathers lounging on stone benches, some perhaps stretching slowly, others chatting quietly. Just as you wouldn't jump straight into an ice bath from a hot tub, they did unexpect you to go from the outside world directly into the scorching heat of the calidarium. Life continued, even within the confines of the bathhouse, but at a slightly slower, more relaxed pace here. The tepidarium was a place to unwind, to mentally prepare for the main event, and to enjoy the simple pleasure of warmth. It was a space for reflection, for quiet conversation, and for the gradual softening of both body and mind. Here, the sounds are dominated by the hiss of steam, the splash of water, and the occasional grunt of exertion as someone scrapes oil and sweat from their skin. Conversations are often shorter, more direct, as the heat encourages focus on the physical sensation. Might scoop some hot water over your shoulders, feeling the warmth immediately penetrate your skin. A wealthy senator might be attended by several slaves, meticulously scraped and oiled, while a common laborer might perform the ritual himself. Yet, all were subjected to the same pervasive heat and humidity. It was a great equalizer, in a way, as everyone sweated equally under the Roman sun and inside the Roman steam. You spend a good amount of time here, allowing the heat to deeply cleanse your pores and relax your entire body, preparing you for the next invigorating stage of the Roman bath routine. This is a crucial step in the Roman bathing routine, designed not just for cleanliness, but for therapeutic benefits. They believed the heat helped with circulation, soothed aching joints, and generally promoted good health. Imagine the relief after a long day of physical labor or intense mental exertion. This is where the unwinding truly begins. You might see people diligently scraping themselves with a strigil, that curved metal tool we'll talk more about later, or waiting for an attendant to assist them. One quirky tidbit: some very elaborate caladeria even featured small, personal niches or cubicles where bathers could experience an even more intense focused heat, almost like a primitive steam capsule. Historians still argue whether these were primarily for privacy or simply for a more concentrated therapeutic experience. You feel your muscles beginning to loosen, the tension from the day slowly melting away under the soothing, consistent warmth. Your muscles relax further, and a sense of drowsiness might begin to creep in, even amidst the invigorating steam. It's a deep, penetrating warmth that seems to reach your very bones. You might notice the various frescoes on the walls, perhaps depicting scenes of Hercules or other mythological figures engaged in athletic feats, or simply abstract patterns that shimmer through the rising steam. Even in this functional, intensely hot space, the Romans didn't forego their love of art and beauty. It's a pleasant sensation, one that makes you eager for the next stage of your ancient Roman spa day. The tepidarium served as that vital intermediary, a buffer zone that allowed your body to slowly adjust, preventing shock and enhancing the overall enjoyment of the bathing process. It also allowed you to slowly perspire, opening up your pores and preparing your skin for a deeper cleanse. This is a place for gentle relaxation, for acclimating your senses, and for easing into the full bath experience. It's the equivalent of a warm-up before a workout, or perhaps the appetizer before the main course of heat and steam. This is where the real heat is, where the steam rises in thick plumes, and where you truly begin to sweat. Imagine stepping into a large, steamy room where the air is so thick with moisture that visibility is slightly reduced, and every surface gleams with condensation. The floor is hot beneath your bare feet, and the walls radiate an intense, pervasive warmth, a direct result of the ingenious hypocaust system working tirelessly below. One quirky tidbit about the tepidarium: some scholars believe it also served as a primary social hub, a place where people would linger, catching up on gossip, discussing philosophy, or even conducting informal business deals. It often features several hot water basins, known as labra or alveoli, filled with steaming water. These weren't for full immersion like a modern hot tub, but rather for splashing hot water over yourself, or for attendants to draw water for various cleansing rituals. The sheer heat is designed to induce profuse sweating, a key component of the Roman cleansing philosophy. They believed that sweating helped to expel impurities from the body, preparing the skin for the subsequent oiling and scraping. You can feel your pores opening almost instantly, and a bead of sweat already forming on your brow. Unlike the noisier palestra or the more intensely hot caladearium, the tepidarium offered a more conducive environment for conversation without having to shout over the din. Historians still argue about the precise social functions of each bath chamber. Was the tepidarium primarily for pre-bath acclimation, or was its social utility just as, if not more, important? This isn't the intense heat of a sauna, nor the shocking chill of a cold plunge. Instead, it's a transitional space, designed to gently prepare your body for the higher temperatures of the caladearium, and to allow for a slow cool-down afterwards. Imagine walking into a room that feels like a perfectly warm hug on a slightly chilly day. The air is humid but not stifling, and a gentle warmth radiates from the walls and floor, a testament to the ingenious Roman heating system working beneath your feet. This room is typically a large, airy hall, often beautifully decorated with frescoes, mosaics, and marble statues. You might observe a slave moving quietly through the room, perhaps offering a fresh towel or a small flask of scented olive oil. Many Romans would apply oil to their skin in the tepidarium, preparing it for the scraping ritual that would follow later. It wasn't just about cleansing, it was about moisturizing and protecting the skin in the humid environment. Imagine the subtle scent of olive oil, perhaps mixed with rose or jasmine, mingling with the natural aroma of warm, damp stone. It's a sensory experience that speaks of indulgence and self-care, Roman style. You settle onto a smooth, warm marble bench, feeling the gentle heat seep into your muscles, encouraging them to relax. You might close your eyes for a moment, listening to the soft murmur of voices, the gentle splashes from distant pools, and the pervasive, comforting hum of the hypocauste system working away below. The Romans understood the importance of gradual transitions, especially when it came to temperature. You watch as others move through the room, a group of young men playfully splashing water on each other, an older woman meticulously oiling her arms, a merchant poring over a small wax tablet. From the gentle warmth of the tepidarium, you now progress into the heart of the Roman bath experience. The calidarium. The calidarium is typically the largest and most elaborate of the heated rooms. The atmosphere in the calidarium is different from the relaxed murmur of the tepidarium. As you sit or stand in the calidarium, perhaps leaning against a warm marble column, you can feel the heat working its magic. The water in the hot basins emits a soft, continuous vapor, adding to the thick, humid air. The calidarium was also a place where different social classes, once again, mixed, though perhaps with less direct interaction than in the tepidarium. After enduring the intense therapeutic heat of the calidarium, your body is now primed for the invigorating shock of the frigidarium. This is the cold plunge pool, the Roman equivalent of an ice bath, designed to close your pores, invigorate your senses. The water, fed by aqueducts, would be naturally cold, crisp, and unbelievably refreshing after the prolonged heat. You'd see fellow bathers taking the plunge with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Some diving in with a gasp and a shout, so others easing themselves in with a slow, deliberate grace. These weren't just for a quick dip. They were places where you could actually swim a few laps, cool down properly, and perhaps even engage in some light water games. Your skin tightens, and your mind feels clearer, more awake. You might spend only a few moments in the frigidarium, or perhaps linger a bit longer, enjoying the unique sensation of your body cooling down after the intense heat. It's a full circle moment, moving from the outside world's temperature, through the warm and hot rooms, and finally back to a state of cool equilibrium. This final cold plunge signifies the peak of your cleansing ritual, leaving you feeling utterly revitalized and ready to face the world again. Or, more likely, ready for a well-deserved nap. Imagine the Roman version of water polo, though, perhaps a bit less formalized. For the average Roman, however, it was more about the invigorating plunge, a quick dip to refresh and prepare for the next stage of relaxation. The contrast is immediate and dramatic. One moment, you're enveloped in a humid cloud. The next, you're immersed in crystal clear, bracing cold, and snap you back into a state of alert, refreshed awareness. It was thought to prevent illness and build resilience, much like modern hydrotherapy. You take a deep breath, steeling yourself, and then step into the cool water. The initial shock is undeniable, a full-body tingle that wakes up every nerve ending. You might let out a small gasp, or perhaps a sigh of pure, unadulterated invigoration. Historians still argue about the exact sequence of bathing for all Romans. While the typical order was warm, too hot, too cold, some evidence suggests individuals might have deviated based on personal preference or specific ailments. Was there a standard, universally adhered to flow, or was it more of a choose-your-own adventure? The debate continues. Imagine stepping out of a steamy sauna and immediately cannonballing into a perfectly chilled swimming pool. That's the sensation, amplified by the pervasive warmth your body has just absorbed. The frigidarium is typically a large open-air, or at least well-ventilated hall, often featuring a deep, cool pool of water. This sudden change in temperature was considered highly beneficial by the Romans, believed to tighten the skin, stimulate circulation, and generally harden the body. The frigidarium often had high ceilings and might feature skylights, allowing natural light to flood the space and reflect off the shimmering surface of the water. They might be less opulent than the calidarium, focusing more on the natural beauty of the water itself. You might see mosaics depicting fish or see nymphs, reinforcing the watery theme. The sounds here are different again. The slosh and splash of bodies entering and exiting the pool, quiet gasps of cold-induced surprise, and the occasional burst of laughter as someone recovers from the initial shock. One quirky tidbit. Some very large bath complexes, like the baths of Caracalla, had truly enormous frigidaria that resembled Olympic-sized swimming pools. As you immerse yourself, you feel the heat slowly draining from your body, replaced by a refreshing coolness. Now, you might think that after the hot, then cold, then hot again dance of the tepidarium, calidarium, and frigidarium, your Roman bath routine would be complete. But for many, especially the more active or socially minded Romans, the baths were just as much about exercise and physical activity as they were about cleansing. This is where the palestra comes in, an open-air exercise ground typically attached to the larger bath complexes. Young men might be honing their wrestling skills, their oiled bodies glistening in the Roman sun. Older men might be throwing a discus, their movements practiced and deliberate. It provided a vital outdoor component to the entire bath experience, offering fresh air and sunlight after spending time indoors. It's a testament to the Roman appreciation for a healthy mind and a healthy body, mens sana in corpore sano. Even if you weren't a professional athlete, a moderate amount of exercise was considered crucial for well-being. So, whether you chose to work up a sweat before your bath or simply stretched a bit afterwards, the palestra offered an essential dimension to the Roman daily routine, a blend of physical exertion and communal enjoyment that truly rounded out the bath experience. You might lean against a column, watching the various activities, feeling the lingering warmth from the calidarium and the refreshing coolness from the frigidarium still present in your body. It's a moment of balanced equilibrium, a testament to the comprehensive design of these ancient leisure complexes. The ground beneath your feet might be packed earth or sand, softened for comfortable movement. The air would be filled with the earthy scent of sweat and dust, a stark contrast to the steamy, mineral-rich air of the bathing rooms. Imagine a spacious courtyard, often surrounded by colonnades, filled with the sounds of grunts, shouts, and the rhythmic thud of bodies. You emerge from the frigidarium feeling invigorated, perhaps a little peckish, but many Romans would head straight for the palestra, either before or after their immersion in the waters. This was where you'd see wrestling, boxing, discus throwing, javelin practice, and various ball games being played. It was a buzzing hub of athletic energy, a place to work up a sweat before hitting the really hot rooms, or to unwind with some light exercise after a refreshing plunge. One quirky tidbit: Roman ball games could be quite varied, from simple catch with a small ball to more complex games involving teams and larger air-filled balls. Some historians still argue whether these games were structured with formal rules or if they were more spontaneous, pick-up matches dictated by the whims of the players. As you wander through the palestra, you'd see men engaged in various forms of physical exertion. The palestra wasn't just for serious athletes. It was a place for general fitness and social interaction. You might see a group of friends engaged in a casual game of trigon, their laughter echoing off the surrounding walls. Or perhaps a philosophy tutor leading a small discussion group while strolling around the perimeter. It was a multi-purpose space, blending recreation, physical improvement, and social engagement. Remember how the Romans integrated so many aspects of life into one complex? The baths were the epitome of this holistic approach. For those who preferred less strenuous activity, the palestra might also feature areas for gentle stretching or simply for walking and talking. The sounds of the palestra are a vibrant symphony of human effort. The slap of skin, the thud of feet, the occasional shouted encouragement, and the constant murmur of conversation. After all that heat, cold, and perhaps a bit of exercise in the palestra, your body is now thoroughly warmed, your pores open, and your muscles relaxed. This brings us to a hallmark of Roman hygiene that might seem a little unconventional to modern sensibilities: the oil and strigil rituals. Imagine someone pouring olive oil all over your body, then meticulously scraping it off with a curved metal tool. Sound relaxing? For the Romans, it absolutely was, and it was considered the most effective way to truly get clean. You're now likely in the tepidarium or a dedicated anointing room, where attendants, often slaves, would assist bathers in this essential process. You might then rinse off any remaining oil or grime with warm water. The result was skin that felt remarkably clean, soft, and refreshed, without the drying effects that modern soaps can sometimes have. It was a deep cleanse, a gentle exfoliation, and a massage all rolled into one. You might notice the attendants performing this with a rhythmic efficiency, their movements almost hypnotic. The sound of the strigil scraping against oiled skin became a familiar, comforting part of the bathhouse soundscape, a soft, almost leathery rasp. You might sit on a marble bench or even lie down. You might watch others being scraped, or even discuss the merits of different oils or strigil techniques. It was a shared experience, a part of the communal journey towards cleanliness and relaxation. Imagine a modern spa, but instead of scented candles and hushed tones, you have the clink of metal, the slick sound of oil, and the constant murmur of conversation. It's a pragmatic approach to hygiene, deeply ingrained in their daily lives, far more effective than you might initially assume. You emerge from this ritual feeling incredibly light, your skin remarkably smooth, and ready for the next stage of relaxation. First, a generous amount of olive oil, sometimes scented with perfumes like rose, jasmine, or myrrh, would be applied to your skin. This wasn't just any olive oil. It was often high quality, pure oil, intended to lubricate the skin and help lift away dirt, sweat, and dead skin cells. Imagine the sensation. A cool, viscous liquid being smoothed over your warmed skin, creating a slippery, almost luxurious feeling. This oil acted as a sort of ancient soap, binding to impurities on your skin. Then comes the strigil. This is a curved, typically bronze or iron implement with a handle shaped much like a small, blunt, elongated spoon. An attendant would take the strigil and, with practiced strokes, scrape the oil, sweat, and accumulated grime from your skin. It sounds harsh, doesn't it? But performed correctly, it was actually quite gentle and effective. Imagine long, smooth strokes, like a squeegee cleaning a window. The goal wasn't to scrub or abrade the skin, but to lift away the oily film and everything it had absorbed. You'd see rolls of grayish-brown gunk coming off, a visual testament to how dirty you actually were. One quirky tidbit? Some very wealthy Romans owned strigils, made of silver or even gold. Perhaps inlaid with precious stones, elevating a simple hygiene tool into a status symbol, these certainly weren't for daily use by the masses. Historians still argue about the consistency of this ritual across all social classes. Did everyone receive the same thorough scraping, or were there varying degrees of meticulousness based on one's wealth and the quality of their attendance? We can assume the very rich had a far more luxurious, personalized experience. The process would be repeated until your skin felt clean and smooth. For Romans, this wasn't merely about personal cleanliness. It was also a social act. Once your skin is thoroughly cleansed of oil and grime, perhaps feeling incredibly smooth and refreshed, many Romans would turn their attention to personal grooming, specifically shaving and hair care. The Roman bath complex wasn't just a place to wash. It was a full-service wellness center. For Roman men, a clean-shaven face was generally the norm, though beards occasionally came in and out of fashion, especially among philosophers or during certain imperial trends. A shave was not a quick affair. Barbers used sharp bronze or iron razors, and the process could be quite involved, often requiring multiple passes and a steady hand. And the gentle murmur of conversation between client and barber. You might hear complaints about dull blades, or enthusiastic discussions about the latest hairstyle trends in the forum. It was about presenting oneself well to society, maintaining a sense of order and refinement. Remember how Roman society valued discipline and order? Even personal grooming reflected this. You emerge from the barber's chair feeling not just clean but polished, ready to face the world with a fresh look. Whether you opted for a smooth shave, a trim, or an elaborate coiffure, the barber's touch was a final essential step in the Roman bath routine, adding a touch of personal flair to your refreshed state. It's a microcosm of Roman daily life, played out amidst the steam and echoes of the baths. Imagine leaning back on a stone bench, perhaps with a warm towel placed on your face to soften the stubble. As the tancer meticulously scrapes away the hair, this was an art form, and a good barber was highly valued. One quirky tidbit: Roman barbers were known for their gossip. They were privy to all the latest rumors and news, making the barber's chair a prime spot for social updates. Historians still argue whether this gossip was actively encouraged by patrons for entertainment, or simply an unavoidable byproduct of a captive audience. And barbers were an integral part of the experience. Roman hairstyles could be incredibly elaborate, especially for women, involving intricate braids. curls, and even hairpieces. Barbers or specialized hairdressers would offer services like cutting, styling, and even dyeing hair. Imagine the careful parting of hair, the precise snip of shears, then the application of various pomades and oils to achieve the desired look. It was a time-consuming process reflecting the Roman emphasis on appearance and personal presentation. Imagine the soft scrape of a razor, the snip of shears, and the subtle scent of perfumed oils filling the air. You might head to a dedicated corner or even a small separate room within the bath complex where barbers plied their trade. For those who preferred to keep their beards, or for women, hair care was equally important. The sounds of the barberess area would be distinct from the rest of the baths. The rhythmic snick-snick of shears, the soft scrape-scrape of razors. This attention to grooming highlights the Roman understanding of hygiene extending beyond mere cleanliness. After all that cleansing, heating, cooling, and meticulous grooming, you've probably worked up an appetite or at least a powerful thirst. This brings us to another essential, and perhaps most enjoyable, aspect of the Roman bath experience: snacks and socializing. Various vendors, often with small stalls or mobile carts, would offer a range of refreshments. You'd see groups of friends gathered, sharing food and lively discussion. Business deals might be finalized over a shared plate of olives, and political gossip would flow as freely as the water in the aqueducts. It wasn't enough to cleanse the body, you also nourished it, and perhaps more importantly, you nourished your social connections. As you eat, you observe the lively scene around you. A group of older men are passionately debating the latest chariot race, while a younger couple discreetly holds hands, sharing a cup of wine. Children, now clean and refreshed, chase each other playfully around the edges of the eating area. The smells are comforting and inviting: fresh bread, sharp cheese, sweet fruit. It's a sensory feast, a moment of simple pleasure after the rituals of bathing. This blend of physical care and communal enjoyment truly made the Roman bath experience unique, transforming a mundane task into a daily highlight. Remember how integrated social life was in Roman society? The baths were a prime example of this, offering a public space where everyone, from the senator to the freedman, could mingle and relax. One quirky tidbit: some bathhouses even had vendors selling ready-made, simple meals to take home, essentially providing a Roman takeaway service. Historians still argue about the true culinary diversity available within the bath complexes. Was it mostly simple, staple foods, or could one find more elaborate gourmet options for the elite? The truth likely lies somewhere in between, with larger, more prestigious baths offering more choice. This could include simple fare like bread rolls, cheese, olives, and dates. You might hear someone complaining about the quality of the bread or praising the sweetness of the dates. It's a snapshot of everyday Roman life, unvarnished and authentic. You could easily spend an hour or more just enjoying the refreshments and soaking in the social atmosphere, effectively using the baths as a community center. For something sweeter, you might find dried figs or honey cakes. To quench your thirst, there would be water, often chilled, or perhaps a diluted wine, possibly flavored with herbs. Imagine sipping on a cool, diluted wine after emerging from the calendarium, feeling utterly refreshed. It's the ancient Roman equivalent of a post-workout smoothie, but perhaps a bit more rustic. The baths weren't just about hygiene. They were vibrant social hubs, and food and drink were never far away. Imagine the tempting aroma of freshly baked bread, the sweet tempts of ripe figs, and the clinking of ceramic cups. You wouldn't necessarily have a full-blown sit-down meal, but more like what we call a snack bar or cafeteria within the bath complex. The areas designated for eating and drinking would often be near the palestra or in a quieter corner of the tepidarium, places conducive to lingering in conversation. The sounds of this area would be a cheerful blend: the clatter of earthenware plates, the murmur of conversation, the occasional burst of laughter, and the cries of vendors announcing their wares. This emphasis on food and drink reinforces the idea that the baths were about holistic well-being. You might pick up a warm bread roll, perhaps dipped in a little olive oil, and find a spot on a bench. Beyond the physical cleansing, exercise, and social eating, the Roman bath complexes often offered a surprising array of intellectual pursuits. This brings us to the fascinating presence of libraries and lecture halls within these bustling hubs of relaxation. Imagine emerging from a steamy bath, perhaps still feeling the lingering warmth, and then strolling into a quiet room filled with scrolls and the hushed whispers of scholarly discussion. It's a testament to the Roman appreciation for both bodily and mental stimulation. While not every small local bathhouse boasted a full library, the Grand Imperial Thermae certainly did. Libraries offered access to knowledge for those who might not have private collections, democratizing learning in a way. You might pick up a scroll on the history of Rome, or perhaps a collection of Seneca's letters. The cool air, the hushed environment, the scent of ancient texts would create a serene escape within the larger, bustling complex. It's a fascinating glimpse into a culture that valued lifelong learning and intellectual curiosity, seamlessly integrating it into the daily ritual of bathing and relaxation. These could be smaller, less elaborate versions of the main bath complex, featuring their own apodarium, tepidarium, calidarium, and frigidarium. Imagine the logistical challenge of coordinating thousands of bathers this way. This system allowed both genders to access the same grand facilities, albeit not simultaneously. You might see a stream of women entering as men are exiting, a quiet changing of the guard. The atmosphere during women's hours might have been different, perhaps a focus on more leisurely conversations, beauty rituals, and less on intense physical exercise in the palestra, which was often male-dominated. Imagine stepping into a slightly less grand, but equally functional set of rooms, designed specifically for women. The sounds might be a little softer, perhaps more focused on conversation, and less on boisterous activity. One quirky tidbit: some women's sections were noted for having slightly higher temperatures in their calidaria, catering to a perceived preference for hotter steam among female bathers. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread architectural standard or simply anecdotal observation. And the lectures provided a forum for public discourse and intellectual engagement. Remember how the forum was a place for public speaking and debate? They would bring their attendants, much like men, to assist with oiling, scraping, and elaborate hairstyling. They might apply perfumed oils, cosmetics, and engage in lengthy discussions about fashion and family matters. Remember how Roman women often held significant influence within their households and social circles? The baths provided a vital space for these connections to flourish. The baths offered a more relaxed, perhaps even more intimate, setting for similar intellectual exchanges. In grand imperial baths, however, the desire for order and public morality often led to clearer distinctions. So as you observe the bath complex, you might notice architectural clues. A separate entrance. Smaller doorways leading to a distinct wing, indicating where Roman women would have enjoyed their own surprisingly chill, yet socially vibrant bathing experience. It's a reminder that even in seemingly universal Roman practices, daily life was often shaped by gendered expectations and social norms. These were substantial collections of scrolls, often housed in beautiful, marble-lined rooms with niches for shelves. Eminent scholars might hold forth on topics ranging from history and poetry to science and rhetoric. This is where the picture gets a bit more nuanced. As rules and customs varied significantly across different periods and locations within the Roman Empire, imagine a separate wing, perhaps a different entrance, or even entirely different hours. A complex dance of social norms and practicalities. Imagine the intellectual buzz, the exchange of ideas happening just steps away from the calidarium. As public baths grew larger and more elaborate under the empire, the question of mixed bathing became a subject of both public debate and official regulation. While some sources suggest mixed bathing did occur, especially in the more informal or luxurious private baths, it was often frowned upon by moralists and eventually even prohibited by some emperors, like Hadrian, due to perceived indecency. So, you wouldn't necessarily see men and women freely mingling in the calidarium of every bathhouse. It provided a unique environment where the mind could be stimulated, even as the body was being pampered. One quirky tidbit: some literary figures were known to deliberately visit the baths with their latest compositions, hoping to attract an audience for an impromptu reading or recitation. Historians still argue about how formal or informal these lecture settings truly were. Were they pre-scheduled events, or more spontaneous gatherings of like-minded intellectuals? The truth likely varied greatly depending on the specific bathhouse and its patrons. Imagine the scent of aged papyrus and cedar oil mingling with the faint, pleasant aroma of the baths. wasn't just about passive relaxation. It was about improving oneself, both physically and mentally. You might see a group of older men engaged in a passionate debate about a philosophical text, their voices low and intense. Or a younger student diligently copying passages from a scroll, perhaps preparing for a rhetorical exercise. The atmosphere here would be distinctly quieter than the main bathing halls, a welcome respite from the splashes and chatter. You could theoretically go for a swim, get a massage, and then settle down with a good book, all under one roof. It's the ancient world's answer to a community center with an integrated spa and public library. These libraries weren't just for quiet reading. They often hosted lectures, readings, and philosophical discussions. The presence of these intellectual spaces highlights a key aspect of Roman culture, the belief that leisure should be productive and enriching. The Romans understood that a well-rounded individual needed intellectual exercise as much as physical. So as you wandered through the bath complex, perhaps enjoying a moment of quiet after your cleansing rituals, you could easily drift into the library. You've seen the general flow of the Roman baths, but what about everyone? Specifically, how did women experience the baths? Historically, in the early Republic, bathhouses were often simpler and men and women usually bathed separately or at different times. More commonly, bathhouses would have separate sections for women, often referred to as the balnea mulibria. Alternatively, some bathhouses practiced segregated hours, where men would use the facilities during one part of the day and women during another. For Roman women, particularly those of the elite, the baths were not just about hygiene, but also about social gathering and beauty routines. The strictness of segregation varied greatly. In smaller towns or less formal establishments, rules might have been more relaxed, or facilities too limited to allow for strict separation. Having explored the experiences of adults, both male and female, within the Roman baths, it's worth considering another vital segment of Roman society: children. How did young Romans experience these bustling, often chaotic, yet deeply integral public spaces? Imagine the delightful, if sometimes exasperating, presence of children darting through the echoing halls, splashing in the pools. The palestra offered ample space for them to run, jump, and engage in simple games, perhaps learning the rudiments of wrestling from an older boy or a friendly soldier. Their laughter and shouts would echo off the stone walls, adding to the general hubbub. It ensured the children were clean, provided an outlet for their youthful energy, and offered a valuable opportunity for social learning. Attendants would likely have to contend with more mess, more noise, and the occasional misadventure. Imagine a child slipping on a wet floor or splashing a dignified senator by accident. Imagine a series of brick or stone pillars, typically around 2 to 3 feet high, built across the entire floor area of the rooms that needed heating, primarily the tepidarium and calidarium. It allowed the Romans to achieve the high temperatures necessary for their steam baths without exposing bathers to open flames or excessive smoke. The sounds in the heating rooms would have been faint, perhaps the distant crackle of wood burning or the soft rush of air as it moved through the channels. Imagine the skill of the Roman architects and engineers who could design and build structures capable of maintaining these consistent high temperatures across vast areas, often for centuries. This innovation wasn't just for baths. Hypocausts were also used to heat wealthy villas and other public buildings, demonstrating their versatility and effectiveness. It was an invisible infrastructure, yet utterly essential to the entire bath experience. One quirky tidbit: the profurnium, the furnace room where the fires were stoked, was often tended by slaves, who would have had one of the hottest and most arduous jobs in the entire bath complex. Historians still argue about the precise efficiency of these early hypocaust systems. How much fuel did they consume, and how consistently could they maintain desired temperatures across different bathhouses? It was the technological backbone that allowed the Romans to create these luxurious, multi-roomed thermal complexes. Remember how the Romans excelled at practical engineering? The hypocaust is a prime example, a testament to their ingenuity in harnessing natural principles for human comfort and well-being. So as you relax in the soothing warmth of the baths, take a moment to appreciate the unseen system humming quietly beneath you, a silent monument to Roman brilliance. On top of these pillars, large tiles or stone slabs were laid, forming a raised floor. A furnace, usually located in an adjacent room or underground, would burn wood or charcoal. The hot air and smoke from this furnace would then be channeled through the spaces created by the pillars, effectively turning the entire floor into a giant radiator. The hot air would then rise through flues or hollow tiles embedded in the walls, heating them as well before eventually escaping through vents in the roof. Yet, these minor inconveniences were clearly outweighed by the benefits of integrating the younger generation into this vital social institution. So, as you drift through the various chambers, you might spot a small, wet footprint on the mosaic floor, or hear the distant squeal of a child, reminding you that the Roman baths were truly for everyone. From the oldest senator to the youngest citizen in training, children would witness adults conducting business, engaging in philosophical debate, and simply relaxing, absorbing the rhythms and norms of Roman society through direct observation. The answer lies beneath your very feet, in one of the most brilliant and foundational inventions of Roman engineering, the hypocaust system. Imagine a giant hidden furnace working silently below ground, channeling hot air to create the perfect, pervasive warmth. It's the ancient world's central heating, but on a colossal scale. Remember how Roman education often involved practical experience and observation? The baths were an extension of this informal learning environment. You might hear the splash of their playful dives, the excited chatter as they chase each other around the pools, or the occasional cry of a toddler being bathed by a parent or nursemaid. It's a vivid reminder that the baths were truly communal spaces, serving every age group within Roman society. The baths provided a safe, supervised environment for physical activity, essential for their development. One quirky tidbit. Some sources suggest that very young children were allowed to bring small, waterproof toys into the pools. Perhaps tiny wooden boats or figures, to keep them entertained. Historians still argue about the extent to which children's play was structured within the baths. Was it purely spontaneous, or were there dedicated activities or spaces for them beyond general observation, and generally adding an extra layer of liveliness to the bathhouse cacophony? Children were, in fact, regular attendees at the baths. From a young age, Roman children would accompany their parents, particularly their fathers, to the public baths. This wasn't just about hygiene. It was a crucial part of their socialization. They would learn proper etiquette, observe adult interactions, and participate in a fundamental aspect of Roman daily life. Imagine a small child, perhaps no older than 5 or 6, mimicking their father's movements as he stretches in the palestra, or awkwardly trying to scrape themselves with a miniature strigil. While there weren't typically separate kids' pools in the modern sense, children would use the shallower parts of the frigidarium for swimming and play. The atmosphere when children were present would undoubtedly be louder and more energetic. For parents, bringing their children to the baths served multiple purposes. Of course, the presence of children also meant certain challenges. We've now explored the various rooms and the people who used them, but how did these vast Roman bath complexes actually get hot? The hypocaust system was essentially an underfloor heating method. This continuous circulation of hot air created a pervasive, gentle heat that warmed the rooms evenly, unlike direct fires, which could be smoky and uneven. You can almost feel the residual warmth radiating from the mosaic floor beneath your bare feet. Knowing that beneath that intricate pattern, a sophisticated network of hot air channels is silently working. The engineering required for the hypocaust system was remarkable. It involved careful planning of airflow, insulation, and heat retention. Without the hypocaust, the concept of the Roman public bath as we know it, with its distinct hot, warm, and cool rooms, would simply not have been possible. The hypocaust system explained how the baths got hot. But what about the sheer volume of water needed to fill those pools, supply those fountains, and generate all that steam? This brings us to another monumental feat of Roman engineering, the water supply logistics. Imagine endless streams of fresh, clean water flowing constantly into the city and then efficiently distributed to these massive public bath complexes. It's a miracle of ancient urban planning. The primary source of water for Roman cities, and therefore their baths, was the ingenious system of aqueducts. These magnificent structures, some stretching for miles, transported water from distant springs and rivers, often traversing valleys on towering, arched bridges or tunneling through hills. Wastewater filled with the grime of thousands of bathers. It was a testament to the Roman state's commitment to public health and leisure, viewing clean water and access to bathing as essential services for its citizens. But behind every smoothly flowing aqueduct, every perfectly heated room, and every scraped body lay an often unseen yet absolutely essential workforce: slave labor. Imagine countless individuals toiling tirelessly, ensuring the gears of this massive leisure machine turned without a hitch. This involved cleaning the pools, ensuring the drains were clear, and constantly checking the flow from the aqueducts. These were the individuals who assisted bathers with the oiling and scraping rituals, applied perfumes, and generally catered to the needs of the patrons, managing supplies, tending the barber shops, and even maintaining the attached libraries and lecture halls. Every aspect of the bath experience, from the moment you walked in until you left, was facilitated by their unseen efforts. They had to be attentive, skilled, and discreet, while some might have been freedmen or even paid laborers. A significant portion would have been slaves, performing intimate tasks for their masters or for the general public. Imagine having your body meticulously scraped by someone whose freedom was entirely dependent on their owner. One quirky tidbit. Some literary sources mention particularly skilled or charming bath attendants who were sought after by patrons, hinting at a degree of personality and service quality even within the confines of slavery. Historians still argue about the relative proportion of slave labor versus freedmen or wage-earning workers in bath operations. Was it overwhelmingly slave-driven, or did economic realities encourage some paid positions? Maintaining water quality and proper sanitation in a public bath used by thousands was a monumental undertaking, relying heavily on manual labor. You might see slaves quietly sweeping floors, scrubbing down walls, or carrying buckets of fresh water to basins. It's a sobering, yet vital aspect of understanding Roman daily life. Remember how the Romans prioritized public works and infrastructure? The water supply to the baths is a shining example of this dedication. So as you relax in the clean, refreshing water of the Roman baths, it's a reminder that the seemingly chill and leisurely atmosphere of the Roman baths was built upon a foundation of immense, often unacknowledged human toil. Oh, remember how Roman society was fundamentally built on the institution of slavery? The baths were a prime example of how this economic and social structure permeated every aspect of public life, allowing citizens to enjoy their leisure by delegating the arduous work to others. It's a complex and often uncomfortable truth, but one that is essential to fully understanding the grandeur and daily functioning of these ancient Roman marvels. Take a moment to appreciate the unseen network of aqueducts and pipes that made it all possible, a testament to an ancient world surprisingly advanced in its logistical capabilities. It had to be efficiently removed, often channeled into the city's extensive sewer system, like the famous Cloaca Maxima. This dual system of supply and removal ensured that the baths remained relatively hygienic. Despite the communal nature of the bathing, there were slaves dedicated to stoking the furnaces of the hypocaust system, shoveling wood or charcoal around the clock to maintain the necessary temperatures. This was a hot, demanding, and often dangerous job. Imagine the heat, the smoke, and the constant physical exertion required to keep those fires roaring day in and day out. The water flowed by gravity, meticulously designed with a slight, consistent gradient to maintain its momentum. Imagine the gentle, continuous murmur of water flowing within these channels, a constant source of life for the city. Once the water reached the city, it was collected in large reservoirs or distribution tanks. From there, lead or ceramic pipes would branch out, channeling the water to various public amenities, with the baths being among the largest consumers. The amount of water required for a major bath complex like the baths of Caracalla or Diocletian was staggering, enough to supply a small modern city. This wasn't just for filling the pools. It was also for the constant replenishment of fresh water, for flushing waste, and for creating the steam. One quirky tidbit: to ensure a continuous supply, many bathhouses had multiple feeder pipes from different aqueducts, acting as a backup system in case one source was interrupted. Historians still argue about the average daily water consumption per bather. Was it a wasteful luxury or a remarkably efficient system for a pre-industrial society? You can almost visualize the journey of the water, from a pristine spring in the distant hills, flowing steadily through those monumental arches, entering the city, and finally reaching the bathhouse, the sound of running water would have been a constant soothing presence in many parts of the bath complex, particularly around the frigidarium and the various fountains and basins. It was the lifeblood of the baths, making all the other rituals possible. The Romans had sophisticated methods for managing this water. They understood pressure, flow rates, and drainage. The construction and maintenance of these aqueducts and internal plumbing systems required immense resources and skilled labor. We've admired the architectural marvels, the ingenious heating, and the vast water supply systems of the Roman baths. The operation of a major Roman bath complex required an enormous amount of continuous labor. Other slaves were responsible for the enormous task of managing the water. Then there were the bath attendants, the balneators, and unchuary. Beyond the direct services, slaves performed countless other essential tasks, cleaning the apoditor, guarding belongings as we discussed, sometimes poorly. The sounds of slave labor would have been subtle, yet constant. The rhythmic clang of shovels in the furnace room, the swish of brooms on mosaic floors, the quiet footsteps of attendants moving through the chambers. With the hidden workings of the baths now understood, let's consider the more visible aspects of daily interactions, bath etiquette and rules. While the Roman baths were famously democratic, allowing people from all walks of life to mingle, there were still unwritten customs and even peculiar regulations that governed behavior. Imagine a subtle dance of social cues, unspoken understandings, and the occasional very loud breach of decorum. Firstly, silence was definitely not golden in the Roman baths. The baths typically opened around midday and closed at dusk, with peak hours often being in the late afternoon. There was an understanding of communal property and shared access. Public displays of affection, for instance, were likely kept discreet, if at all. And while discussions could be lively, outright arguments or aggressive behavior would have been swiftly dealt with by bathhouse staff, who maintained order. But beyond the immediate feeling of refreshment, what did the Romans actually believe were the deeper health benefits of this daily ritual? And how do their ancient theories compare to our modern understanding? It was believed to close the pores that the heat had opened, to tone the skin, and to invigorate the body and mind. The baths were a place to relax, unwind, and escape the stresses of daily life. The social interaction, the gossip, the philosophical discussions, all contributed to mental well-being. Despite the differences in scientific understanding, the overall effect of the Roman bath routine was undoubtedly positive for many. It was a holistic approach to wellness, combining hygiene, exercise, social interaction, and mental relaxation. Remember how deeply integrated these practices were into Roman daily life? It wasn't a luxury for most. It was a fundamental component of their routine, contributing to what they perceived as a healthy and balanced existence. So as you reflect on your ancient Roman spa day, you can appreciate that while some of their health theories differ from ours, the core experience of invigoration and relaxation remains surprisingly timeless. A Roman writer, Seneca, famously complained about the noise of the public baths next to his lodgings. But even his complaints implicitly acknowledged their pervasive and popular nature. A place of constant human activity and interaction. Sudden contrast in temperatures was thought to stimulate the nervous system and increase resilience to illness. The relaxation of muscles from heat, the improved circulation, and the psychological benefits of a calming routine are well understood today. The physical exfoliation from the oil and strigil would indeed remove dead skin cells and grime, improving skin health. However, the idea of sweating out toxins in the simplistic Roman sense is less aligned with modern physiology, which understands detoxification primarily as a function of organs like the liver and kidneys. While temperature contrasts can be invigorating, their specific claims about preventing certain illnesses are largely superseded by germ theory and modern medicine. It was a form of ancient hydrotherapy, believed to harden the body and prevent chills or fevers. One quirky tidbit: some Roman medical texts would prescribe specific bathing routines. How long in each room? How many plunges for different ailments? Much like a modern doctor might prescribe a particular exercise regimen. Historians still argue about the true scientific basis of these ancient medical theories. While some intuitive benefits like muscle relaxation are clear, how much of their understanding was based on empirical observation versus philosophical speculation? Imagine a Roman physician meticulously observing bathers, pondering the therapeutic effects of heat, cold, and oil, perhaps making pronouncements that sound quaint to our ears today. Remember how important order and public peace were to the Romans? Even in a place of leisure, chaos was generally discouraged. Imagine a modern public pool where everyone instinctively knows not to block the lane or splash indiscriminately. The Romans had similar, though perhaps less formalized, understandings. If you wanted a more relaxed, less crowded experience, you'd go earlier. If you wanted the full social scene, you'd join the throngs closer to evening. But the kind of sounds mattered. The gentle murmur of philosophical debate might blend with the playful shouts of children, but the piercing shriek of a loud argument or the disruptive banging of equipment would stand out. So, as you navigated the communal spaces, you would quickly pick up on the unspoken rules, observing how others behaved and adjusting your own conduct. It was a fascinating blend of freedom and subtle social control, allowing thousands of Romans to share these vital spaces every day in a surprisingly chill, albeit noisy, fashion. Knowing these rhythms was part of being a seasoned bather. As we've heard, they were noisy, bustling places. However, there were expectations regarding the type of noise. They believed that the hot rooms, the calidarium and tepidarium, helped to open the pores, allowing the body to sweat out toxins and impurities. This concept of purging was central to ancient medicine, much like the idea of balancing humors in the body. The heat was also thought to soothe aching muscles and joints, improve circulation, and alleviate various bodily discomforts. Imagine a Roman soldier, stiff from a long march, finding immense relief in the penetrating warmth of the calidarium. A quick pre-wash might be customary for some. More importantly, the use of oil in the strigil was a public communal act, and while messy, it was part of the expected routine. You wouldn't just scrub yourself with sand and then jump directly into the main pool without being oiled and scraped. That would be a major faux pas. One quirky tidbit. Some very fastidious Romans would bring their own personal strigils and oils, believing them to be cleaner or of higher quality than those available for general use at the bathhouse. Historians still argue about the commonality of public nakedness versus the use of loincloths or towels within the baths. While artistic depictions often show full nudity, were there societal pressures or personal preferences that led to more modest attire for some? Boisterous shouts, excessive loud talking, and the general clamor were common. What might be frowned upon, though, was disruptive behavior that genuinely impeded others' enjoyment or safety. For instance, cannonballing into a crowded frigidarium and splashing everyone might earn you a stern glare, if not an outright reprimand from an attendant. One key aspect of etiquette revolved around cleanliness itself. While the baths were for getting clean, you weren't expected to arrive absolutely filthy. Punctuality, or rather, timing, was also a subtle rule. Respect for shared spaces was crucial. You wouldn't hog a labrum or monopolize a bench in the tepidarium. While public bathing was common, there were limits. The sounds in the baths, as we've established, were a symphony of daily life. You've now experienced the full Roman bath routine, from warming up to cooling down, cleansing, grooming, and even socializing. For the Romans, the benefits of bathing were numerous and deeply ingrained in their medical philosophy. The cold plunge in the frigidarium, while shocking, was also considered highly beneficial. Beyond the physical, the Romans also recognized the psychological and social benefits. From a modern perspective, some of their beliefs hold up surprisingly well. Having now understood the daily routines and the health theories behind them, let us zoom out and consider some of the truly magnificent structures that facilitated this daily Roman ritual. The famous bath complexes. Imagine arriving at an architectural marvel, so vast and grand that it rivaled palaces, a testament to imperial power and public welfare. These were not just functional buildings, were masterpieces of engineering and art. They included not only the standard apodarium, tepidarium, calidarium, and frigidarium, but also expansive palaestrae for exercise, libraries, lecture halls, art galleries, gardens, and even shops, and colossal statues of gods, heroes, and emperors. They were a visible demonstration of Roman wealth, engineering prowess, and the state's commitment to providing public amenities. This brings us to the more intimate and perhaps equally significant world of small-town baths. While they lacked the monumental scale and extravagant decoration of the baths of Caracalla, they still featured the essential components: an apoditium, tepidarium, calidarium, and frigidarium. In a town without a grand theater or amphitheater, the local bathhouse would be the primary gathering place, a nexus of social interaction, formal business, and daily news exchange. The atmosphere might be less formal, perhaps more intimate, fostering closer connections among neighbors, but perhaps a bit more focused: the splash of water, the murmur of local dialect, the familiar scrape of a strigil. It wasn't just a luxury for the elite in Rome. It was an integral part of life for many, from the bustling cities to the remote frontier outposts. They were built wherever Romans settled, a testament to their commitment to public health, communal life, and the simple pleasure of a good, clean soak. Remember how efficiently the Romans disseminated their culture and infrastructure. The widespread presence of even humble bathhouses is a prime example of this enduring legacy. So, as you envision your Roman bath experience, remember that it could be grand and imperial, or small and intimately local, but always surprisingly chill and deeply ingrained in daily life. You might hear about local elections, upcoming festivals, or the price of grain. The air would still be warm and humid, carrying the scent of olive oil and damp stone, a universal Roman bath experience regardless of scale. You'd likely recognize more faces here than in the sprawling crowds of Rome's imperial baths. The hypocaust system would still be in place, though perhaps on a simpler scale. The water supply would still be meticulously managed. These baths were not just for hygiene. They were crucial for morale and discipline. Imagine a group of tired legionaries, caked in dust from a long march, unwinding in the warm waters, sharing stories of their campaigns. These military baths, while often utilitarian in design, were vital for maintaining the health and well-being of the Roman army. Historians still argue about the frequency of bathing in these smaller rural contexts. Was it truly a daily ritual for everyone, or more of an occasional indulgence for some, especially those without easy access? Imagine the local blacksmith, the baker, and the farmer sharing the same warm pool, discussing the day's harvest or the latest gossip from the market. Imagine stepping into a smaller, less opulent, but no less essential bathhouse in a provincial city or even a military fort, a place where the community truly came together. Remember how the Roman emperors often sought to win public favor through grand gestures? Building spectacular baths was a prime example, providing tangible benefits and awe-inspiring architecture for the masses. Even today, the ruins of these magnificent bath complexes stand as silent testaments to a civilization that understood the art of public relaxation on a truly epic scale. The ceilings were often vaulted, creating vast, echoing spaces that would have enhanced the sounds of splashing water and murmuring voices. Light would stream in through high windows, illuminating the steam and creating a magical, ethereal atmosphere. You could easily spend an entire day there, moving from physical activity to intellectual pursuits, from social gatherings to quiet relaxation. One quirky tidbit: the baths of Caracalla even had an underground network of service tunnels, allowing slaves and attendants to move discreetly and efficiently, maintaining the illusion of effortless luxury above ground. Historians still argue about the true capacity of these megabaths. Were they always operating at their theoretical maximum, or were certain sections closed off during slower periods? The most renowned of these were the imperial baths of Rome, particularly the baths of Caracalla and the baths of Diocletian. These were colossal structures, designed to accommodate thousands of bathers simultaneously. The baths of Caracalla, completed in 216 AD, could host an estimated 1,600 bathers at a time across its various chambers, palaestrae, and gardens. Its frigidarium alone was a monumental hall, later converted into the Basilica of Santa Maria degli Angeli e dei Martiri by Michelangelo, a testament to its enduring scale and architectural brilliance. Imagine the sheer audacity of constructing such immense public buildings. It's not for emperors or gods, but for the daily enjoyment and hygiene of the common citizen. Imagine the sheer scale: towering walls, vaulted ceilings, immense pools, and vast open spaces. The ruins today, though stripped of their marble and statues, still convey a breathtaking sense of grandeur. These imperial baths were more than just bathing facilities. They were elaborate leisure centers. The baths of Diocletian, completed in the early 4th century AD, were even larger, capable of serving around 3,000 bathers. These bath complexes were lavishly decorated. Imagine walls clad in precious marble, floors adorned with intricate mosaics depicting mythological scenes or geometric patterns. The construction of these famous baths required immense resources, vast quantities of materials transported from across the empire, and the labor of thousands. While the grand imperial baths of Rome often dominate our imagination, the reality for most Romans was access to more modest local facilities. These smaller bathhouses, often called balnea rather than thermae, served the daily needs of ordinary citizens outside the capital. These smaller baths were often the social heart of their communities. One quirky tidbit about small-town baths. In military forts, balnea were built specifically for the soldiers. The sounds in a small-town bath would be similar to the grander ones. These smaller baths demonstrate the pervasive nature of Roman bathing culture across the entire empire. Beyond the public spectacles of the thermae and balnea, Roman society also embraced the concept of private bathing, which offers a contrasting, yet equally fascinating glimpse into their hygiene practices. This brings us to the distinctions between private baths versus public baths. Imagine the quiet luxury of a personal plunge pool in a lavish villa or a small, intimate bathing suite in a wealthy townhouse. A stark departure from the communal bustling of the public facilities. For the Roman elite, particularly senators, emperors, and affluent merchants, having a private bath within their own homes or villas was a significant status symbol. The ability to afford and maintain such a facility spoke volumes about one's wealth and influence. It provided an exclusive sanctuary, a place for intimate gatherings and private conversations, far from the prying eyes and ears of the masses. Remember how important social status and display were in Roman society? Forget tranquil spa music. Imagine a vibrant, echoing symphony of human activity that would have been a constant backdrop to daily Roman life. This wasn't a hushed murmur. It was a constant hum of conversation, laughter, and shouts, amplified by the vast vaulted ceilings and hard stone surfaces. The gentle rhythmic slosh of water in the labra as people scooped it over themselves. The faint, steady trickle of water from unseen pipes or fountains, a constant reminder of the aqueduct's generous supply. This watery soundtrack was punctuated by the rhythmic scraping of the strigil on oiled skin, soft, almost leathery shkick, repeated hundreds of times across the various chambers. This sound alone is iconic to the Roman bath experience. But generally, the Roman bath experience was an immersive, auditory one. A constant reminder that you were in the heart of Roman communal life. It certainly wasn't a place for quiet meditation in the modern sense. So as you drift off, imagine that symphony of ancient Roman sounds, comforting, if sometimes overwhelming, backdrop to their daily quest for cleanliness and camaraderie. You'd hear discussions ranging from serious political debates to trivial gossip about chariot races or new fashion trends. It was the sound of physical exertion, a vibrant energy that spilled over into the adjoining bath areas. Even in the more relaxing zones, there was always an undercurrent of human interaction, a testament to the baths as a social melting pot. One quirky tidbit, famously noted by the philosopher Seneca, who lived above a bathhouse. He complained bitterly about the sheer variety of noises, from the strong man swinging lead weights to the hair plucker with his thin, shrill voice, and the pie seller hawking his wares. Historians still argue about whether Seneca's complaints were typical or if he was just particularly sensitive to noise pollution. Imagine trying to relax while the ancient Roman equivalent of a CrossFit class is happening just outside the tepidarium, and the occasional clatter of sandals on mosaic floors, the distant whinny of a horse from the street outside, or the cries of vendors hawking snacks and drinks. It was a multi-layered soundscape, a living, breathing testament to a vibrant public space. Imagine trying to have a quiet moment of reflection amidst this vocal deluge. It's a cacophony and occasional calm that tells a story all its own. Private baths were a prime example of this ostentatious display of wealth. These private baths would often mimic the public complexes on a miniature scale, complete with their own apodidium, tepidarium, calidarium, and frigidarium, all heated by a dedicated hypocaust system. Why? Both served their purpose, catering to different needs and social functions. As you contemplate your Roman bath experience, you can choose the quiet, exclusive luxury of a private villa or the bustling, democratic chaos of a public therme, each offering its own unique flavor of Roman relaxation and hygiene. Because the public baths offered something that private baths couldn't: the sheer scale of social interaction, the vibrant energy of the crowd, the opportunity to see and be seen by a cross-section of Roman society. It was a trade-off between private luxury and public dynamism. A visit to the public baths, even for the elite, was a way to stay connected to the pulse of the city, to engage in broader social and political discourse, and to enjoy the sheer spectacle of it all. Imagine the convenience: no crowds, no waiting for a niche in the changing room, and the ability to dictate the precise temperature and ambience. It was the ultimate expression of personal luxury. The experience in a private bath would be distinctly different. The sounds would be hushed, perhaps just the gentle splash of water, the soft murmur of attendants, or the quiet rustle of silk as a wealthy matron entered her personal calidarium. The would be exquisite, tailored to the owner's taste, featuring the finest marbles, intricate mosaics, and perhaps even fresco paintings depicting serene landscapes or mythological scenes. You wouldn't find the general public here. Access would be strictly limited to the owner, their family, and invited guests. One quirky tidbit: some very elaborate private baths even had small, personal exercise courts, or even mini libraries attached, ensuring that the owner had all the amenities of a public bath without any of the crowds. Historians still argue about the extent to which private baths influenced the design and amenities of public ones. Did the innovations in private luxury eventually trickle down to public facilities, or did they develop independently? While public baths were a democratic space where social classes mingled, private baths reinforced social hierarchies. However, even the wealthiest Romans would often still visit public baths occasionally. So, while the concept of a private Roman bath might initially seem more chill in a modern sense, it often lacked the vibrant, unpredictable energy of its public counterpart. We've touched upon it throughout our journey, but let's now fully immerse ourselves in the true, unfiltered sensory experience of the Roman baths, particularly focusing on the sounds of the baths. The first sound that would strike you upon entering a large bath complex is the echoing roar of hundreds, sometimes thousands of voices. Then there's the pervasive sound of water, the constant splash of bodies entering and exiting the pools, particularly the frigidarium. In the palestra, the sounds would shift to the grunts of wrestlers, the thud of a ball hitting packed earth, the rhythmic breathing of runners, and the occasional clang of weights. The barber's area would add its own distinct audio: the soft snip-snip of shears, the quiet scrape-scrape of razors, and the low gossipy chatter between barber and client. Beyond the human and water sounds, there would be the subtle ambient hum of the hypocaust system working below, a faint crackle of burning wood, a rush of hot air. While the noise could be intense, there were also moments of relative calm, particularly in less crowded corners, or perhaps in the quietude of the libraries. All good things, even the most cherished Roman bath routines, eventually come to an end. This brings us to the decline of the baths, a gradual process intertwined with the broader changes and eventual fall of the Western Roman Empire. Several factors contributed to this. Firstly, the increasing economic hardship and political instability meant less public funding was available for the massive upkeep these complexes required. The vibrant social scene that characterized their heyday slowly diminished. As cities shrank and became less prosperous, the need for such vast public amenities also waned. Without a reliable water supply, the baths simply couldn't function. Marble cladding was stripped for new construction and statues were melted down or broken. The once bustling palaestrae might become grazing land for animals, or simply overgrown fields. Imagine stepping into a sleek, contemporary spa and suddenly realizing that many of its core principles, from the progression of hot to cold to the emphasis on relaxation and well-being, have direct ancient Roman roots. It's a fascinating legacy that proves some ideas truly are timeless: cold showers, plunge pools, or even ice fountains. This invigorating shock, intended to close pores and stimulate circulation, is a direct lineage from the Roman frigidarium. The understanding that alternating hot and cold temperatures can be beneficial for the body is a concept the Romans perfected millennia ago. The enduring appeal of these elements points to a fundamental human desire for sensory comfort and a connection to natural elements. A desire that the Romans clearly understood and catered to on an unprecedented scale. So as you next visit a spa, or even just take a long, relaxing bath, remember the ingenious Romans who laid the groundwork for our modern pursuit of wellness, leaving a remarkably chill and enduring legacy in every steam room and cold plunge pool. One quirky tidbit: some very high-end modern spas explicitly market their Roman bath circuits, directly recreating the ancient progression of rooms, complete with mosaic art and classical architecture. To offer an authentic, historical wellness experience, historians still argue about the extent to which these modern recreations accurately capture the full sensory and social experience of a real Roman bath. Are they truly authentic, or simply a stylized homage? Imagine a vast frigidarium slowly drying up, its intricate mosaics exposed to dust and decay, its lifeblood cut off. And scraping tools, albeit more refined ones than the strigil and relaxation lounges. These reflect the Roman emphasis on holistic well-being that went beyond just getting clean. The idea of a place where you can exercise, relax, socialize, and even engage your mind finds its genesis in the Roman bath complex. But the emphasis shifted, becoming less about grand public spectacles and more about smaller, private bathhouses. People go with friends or meet new acquaintances in the relaxation areas. The quiet hum of conversation, the shared experience of unwinding, all echo the communal spirit of the Roman baths, albeit without the same boisterousness or widespread public nudity. Remember how the Romans integrated so many facets of daily life into one public space? Modern wellness centers, in their own way, attempt to recapture that holistic approach to self-care. The glory days of the colossal public thermae in the West were over. So, as you reflect on the incredible vibrancy and ingenuity of the Roman baths, it's also worth acknowledging their gradual, quiet demise, a slow fade into history that mirrored the twilight of the empire itself. The silence that eventually fell over these magnificent structures tells its own story of change and decline. The sophisticated hypocaust systems, without constant stoking and repair, would eventually cease to function, leaving the hot rooms cold and damp. Maintaining the elaborate hypocaust systems, the vast aqueducts, and the general cleanliness of such large structures was incredibly expensive. Imagine the cost of constantly buying wood or charcoal for those furnaces, or repairing miles of lead piping. Imagine the grand complexes slowly falling into disrepair, the constant hum of life fading, replaced by silence and ruin. The decline of the Roman public baths wasn't a sudden event, but a slow, drawn-out process that began in the later centuries of the Western Empire. Then, you move into heated spaces, saunas, steam rooms, or hot tubs. These are direct descendants of the Roman calidarium. It's a very act of sweating to detoxify or relax muscles, while perhaps understood with more scientific nuance today, still mirrors the Roman belief in the benefits of heat. Early Christian asceticism often viewed public nudity and the perceived excesses of the baths with suspicion, promoting a more modest and less communal approach to hygiene. While many Christians continued to use the baths, the overall cultural emphasis began to shift away from public communal bathing as a central social activity. One quirky tidbit: some early Christian leaders specifically condemned mixed bathing, leading to further segregation or abandonment of certain facilities. Historians still argue about the precise impact of Christianity on the decline of the baths. Was it a primary cause, or merely an accelerating factor amidst broader economic and political decay? Secondly, the gradual decline in urban populations and the general economic contraction meant fewer people were living in the cities. Fewer still could afford the small entry fees or had the leisure time for daily bathing. Thirdly, changes in cultural attitudes and the rise of Christianity played a significant, though debated, role. As the Western Roman Empire fragmented and barbarian invasions became more frequent, essential infrastructure like aqueducts were damaged or neglected. The grand imperial baths were often repurposed. Parts of the baths of Diocletian, as we mentioned, were transformed into a church, and other sections into private dwellings or workshops. The Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantium, continued many Roman traditions, including bathing, for much longer. Even though the grand Roman baths of antiquity have long since faded into ruins, their influence echoes profoundly in our modern world, particularly in the design and concept of modern spas and wellness centers. Think about the structure of a modern spa. You typically start in a warm area, perhaps a changing room or a gentle waiting area, much like the apoditerium and tepidarium. After the heat, what do many modern spas offer? Beyond the temperature transitions, consider the wider amenities. Many modern spas offer massage services, body treatments which can involve oils. The social aspect, while often more subdued in modern spas, still exists. Even the materials used, like marble and stone, and the emphasis on natural light, often found in contemporary spa architecture, pay homage to the Roman aesthetic. We've journeyed through the bustling apoditerium, felt the gentle warmth of the tepidarium, endured the invigorating heat of the calidarium, braved the shock of the frigidarium. The Roman baths were a masterclass in combining practicality with pleasure, wherein your mind gently drifting, carry with you the essence of that Roman chill. Allow the echoes of splashing water and ancient voices to recede, leaving behind only a tranquil calm. Feel the warmth of imagined Roman stones slowly fading from your skin, replaced by the cool comfort of your own bed. Your muscles are heavy, pleasantly tired, and your mind is clear. Unburdened by the thoughts of ancient emperors or ingenious hippocausts, there's nothing more to do, nowhere else to be, just this quiet moment. Let your breathing deepen, slow and steady, like the gentle flow of an ancient aqueduct bringing peace to every part of you. The day's journey is complete, and a profound stillness settles in. Drift deeper now, carried by the soft current of peace. The idea that true relaxation can be found in the simplest, most fundamental acts, shared with others, and elevated by ingenuity and communal spirit. The Roman bath routine, in all its surprisingly noisy glory, was a daily invitation to slow down, unwind, and just be necessity with luxury and individual care with communal experience. They were an ingenious solution to the challenges of urban hygiene, transformed into a beloved daily ritual. It wasn't just about getting clean, it was about being clean together. It was about the shared space, the shared stories, and the shared pursuit of a moment of peace and invigoration in a busy, demanding world. Remember how integral community was to Roman identity? The baths were the ultimate embodiment of this, a daily reaffirmation of shared life, and even explored the lively palestra and the quieter libraries. We've considered the diverse bathers, the ingenious engineering, and the enduring legacy of this ancient Roman ritual. Now, as our Roman bath experience draws to a close, it's time for some final thoughts on relaxation. Imagine yourself cleansed, refreshed, and utterly at peace, reflecting on this surprisingly chill aspect of ancient daily life. The Roman public baths, despite their noise and communal nature, offered a profound sense of relaxation that went far beyond mere physical cleanliness. They were a daily escape, a sanctuary from the stresses of urban life, a place where the physical body and the social self could be renewed. For a civilization that valued discipline and order, these moments of collective unwinding were absolutely essential for maintaining well-being. Imagine the feeling of tension slowly draining from your shoulders as you soak in the warmth, knowing that for a few hours, the demands of Roman society could wait. The constant sounds, which might seem overwhelming to us, would have been a comforting backdrop for the Romans, a familiar symphony of daily life. It was the hum of community, the reassuring presence of others engaged in the same pursuit of well-being. The sensory details, the warm stone, the pervasive humidity, the scent of oil and water, would have created an immersive environment designed to soothe and restore. One quirky tidbit, some very philosophical Romans might even use their time in the baths for quiet contemplation, even amidst the noise, treating the experience as a form of active meditation. Historians still argue about the true psychological impact of the baths on the average Roman. Were they genuinely stress-reducing, or just another obligation of daily life? Ultimately, so, as you slowly emerge from this imagined ancient world, your muscles relaxed, your skin smooth, the day has faded, and the gentle whispers of history are softening just like the evening light.